People who have died and been brought back. What did you see and feel? Nothing but calm relaxation. Woke up with half a beard, sore and down 15 pounds. Mountain bike accident with massive head trauma. Almost 7 years ago. I didn't remember the next 2 months. Fully recovered. Edit. Wear helmets. I was wearing a helmet, not full face. Impact point was between the eyebrows. Helmet saved me. Split the helmet in half, and I do still have a small scar, and the smashed helmet. I'm in my mid-40s now, late 30s at the time of the bike crash. Broke both wrists and a few bones in one hand. Search and rescue and my brothers-in-law found me around 6 to 8 hours after the crash in the middle of the night. I have no memory of the bike crash, the ride, rescue, or the week at the hospital, but I found some videos about a year later. I was back to work 2 months later as a senior financial analyst, desk job, mostly recovered, and I still didn't have much memory of 2 months prior. Had to do the most work on mental tasks. For example, the doc would show me a picture of a whale and ask what it was, and my mind told me whale, but I couldn't communicate that word. I'd say, oh yeah, it's a fish and big and they eat little fish, lots of different kinds of them. And doc would say, what is it? Took me 4 to 6 months to be able to answer that. It was 2 years before I fully recovered. Next story. I had a cardiac arrest and no pulse for 13 minutes. I was kept alive with CPR and eventually shocked back to life with a defibrillator. I woke up several times but kept slipping unconscious. There was nothing there, just black, blank spaces in time that were very short. A lady did the CPR for 40 minutes and it went by in a second. But I did have a feeling of not wanting to die or leave my life. OP, that last line is horrifying in a way, actually. Like, part of me would hope as it's happening, I don't feel that fear or wanting to cling on or anything, you know what I mean? It seems like a lot of mental anguish to go through at the very end. But maybe you needed to keep fighting to stay alive or something, I don't know. Anyway, I'm glad you're still here with us. Next story. I had a saddle pulmonary embolism. The doctor afterwards told me it was the biggest clot he'd ever seen. I can't say for sure, but I know when it happened. In the moments leading up to it, I heard a voice say, "Sit down on the chair." As soon as I did, I was out. I can't describe it other than saying it felt like my body was lifting into the air. I felt simultaneously heavy and super light at the same time. I woke up covered in a cold sweat. I spent a month in the ICU after that. Next story. Nothing. At one point, I was riding my bike. The next, I felt intense pressure on my back and neck, and then darkness. I woke up in the emergency room and doctors say that a van ran over my chest and neck and my heart had stopped. I was dead for 3 minutes. Literally nothing happened while I was dead. I've been knocked out and had weird dreams while I was knocked out every time, but this was just nothing, and then I'm back, as if I had a dreamless sleep. Next story. Nothing. I was just gone. Not even blackness. Just nothing. I OD'd on something that was laced with something bad. Woke up staring at the ceiling with firefighters surrounding me who had administered 4 shots of Narcan. I had a respiratory-induced cardiac arrest. Not sure how long I was out. Didn't know what the hell was going on when I came to, but passed out again shortly after being strapped in and carried down the stairs to the ambulance. Woke up later in the hospital to a gay nurse giving me a whole lot of sass, which I deserved for being an idiot and almost dying. That was my second overdose. First time I was in the hospital getting dialysis for kidney failure for the same dumb crap. I don't do drugs anymore. Screw that life. Next story. A few years ago, my heart hit 180 BPM and would not go down. A trip to the ER in NYC resulted in a dozen young learning doctors standing around as a couple of seasoned vets decided to give me a shot of adenosine. Technically, I had an A-flutter. This drug stops your heart for several seconds in a controlled environment and is intended to restart the heart with the correct beat. They stood by with paddles and gave the shot, saying, "This may not feel comfortable." I was conscious as my heart stopped. I could hear people around me and feel tears fall down my face. The best way to explain the next few seconds was a wave of impending doom, but that's mild. It was a huge wave, a huge rush, a powerful enveloping feeling. I was quite awake, although technically flatlining. I could only say that whatever was about to happen to me was not going to be good. No lights, no angels, just, oh crap. Like you veered off the center lane at 80 miles per hour and you're 5 feet from the front of a Mack truck. And then I woke up. In all, it was about 10 seconds, but an eternity. The drug didn't work. Spent the weekend in hospital and ended up having an ablation. All good. Next story. I had an experience. I don't ever share it because I try not to remember this period in my life. I hold this memory very sacred. This experience left a lasting impression in my life. In 2017, after I drank a bottle of Everclear followed by bleach, Drano, Ajax, and roughly 150 benzodiazepines and anything else I could find. I don't know how to fully articulate my experience. It's so hard to find the right words for what I went through. There was no pain while consuming this concoction. I just felt like someone sucked all the air out of my chest and there was a bubble stuck in my throat. I had a friend that trusted their instinct and called emergency services on me. I had passed out and aspirated on my vomit, which burned through the carpet. I remember paramedics pulling my tongue out of my mouth and hearing someone say, "She's not going to make it." It felt like I just fell asleep, but like the sleep where you know you're asleep. Initially, there was nothing. It was darkness. I felt separated from myself, like I wasn't in my physical form. It's hard to explain. Like I was only my spirit without flesh and blood. I feel like I was almost teleported or beamed into a different dimension or world, and somehow I came to be in this beautiful meadow. The meadow was the most beautiful scene you could imagine. There was a little stream in the distance and a forest beyond it. I remember enjoying this scene, this moment, and the beauty of it all. It sounds really freaking corny, but this meadow was so incredibly beautiful. All I felt was love and appreciation for everything. I also had a feeling that I wasn't alone, but it wasn't a bad feeling. I don't know how it appeared or where it came from, but there was a really beautiful orb that presented itself. Sounds cliche, I know. This orb, to me, was love in its purest form. The orb was able to communicate with me telepathically. The conversation was something along the lines of me acknowledging the beauty that surrounded me and feeling like this is where I wanted to be. I felt like I was given a choice between staying there or going back to reality and back to my body. I really wanted to stay, but I thought of my siblings and how much damage my death would cause them. The moment I thought of my siblings, I felt like I was told, "You made your choice." I felt like I was beamed right back to my body, which had been in the ICU in a medically induced coma. I really feel like I could have stayed. I really wanted to stay, and often feel a sort of homesickness and longing for that place. I can proudly say I'm glad I didn't stay. I will also add that was the last time I attempted to end my life. Next story. When I was 10, I had a cardiac arrest, was in the hospital for the remaining summer. I don't remember everything, but I do know when I came back, I was unable to talk for a while, and I had to relearn how to live. It's been 10 years, and I have a permanent back injury from lying in the hospital for most of the summer that year. Next story. I woke up someplace that I didn't understand. It was like this plane. No structures. It was just off to the horizon in every direction. And I was like, okay, this is weird. And there was a noise, kind of like a hum in the background, like an irritating hum. I don't know, something. Then I saw somebody walking up from a long way away. I thought I recognized him, but I wasn't sure. And it took quite a while for him to start getting up to me. And as he was coming, the hum, the noise, the scratchy, irritating hum was getting a little bit... And as he was coming, the hum, the noise, the scratchy, irritating hum was getting a little bit louder all the time. And I realized that this hum was something unpleasant. I didn't know what it was, and I knew that I didn't want to know what it was. Then I recognized the person that was coming up to me as someone I knew. He was my old boss at work that was always nice to me and looked out for me, who died. As he walked by, he said casually, "Oh, that's just Steven, he's okay." And the noise went quiet. Next story. I had a rather strange near-death experience because I felt things in place of my son. Note, I don't believe in life after death or spirits at all, but I am convinced that the brain is an absolutely fascinating organ capable of very powerful dreams. At the maternity ward, my son, who was only a few days old, was very ill. That night I entrusted him to the midwives. I didn't feel strong enough to watch over him. I wanted to sleep a little. During the night I felt an intense cold, so intense that I could only shake very hard, much more than a normal shiver from cold. I couldn't call for help or move. I was paralyzed. In fact, I thought, death is coming for my son. If I let it pass, it'll take him. I fought as hard as I could to stop the sensation. I really felt like I had fallen into a frozen lake. Then it passed, and I fell back asleep. Sometime later, a pediatrician woke me up to tell me my son was in critical condition and that they had been trying to save him since the middle of the night without understanding what was happening. His body was giving up. He was transferred to the hospital. The emergency doctor told me later that she thought she wouldn't be able to save him and that he held on beyond all expectations. I also saw him in critical condition, and I still wonder how he could endure that. Apart from the harrowing situation, the episode that night made me think a lot. Did I hear something to inspire that dream? My room was across from the pediatrician's room. Anyway, I've never found any other testimonies like this. Edit. For those wondering, my son is alive. He underwent an open heart surgery that saved his life. In our misfortune, we were lucky that the department where he was admitted had one of the world's leading specialists in his cardiac condition. The entire team was well versed in this specific pathology. They understood what was happening within minutes, even though it was a very rare case. It was a really close call. Next story. I saw the light. Followed it up into what I can only describe as a big hotel atrium lobby, all white. Every dead person I knew was there, and many I didn't know, but I recognized them from old family photos. My grandfather said, "What are you doing here? It's not your time yet." Then I drifted away and woke up in bed with an almighty thump. The thing I'll never forget is the overwhelming feeling of love in that room, and everyone there just being happy and contented. Could have just been a dream, I don't know, but it's never happened again, and I've never experienced anything like it. Next story. Not so much that I died, but I had a near-death experience. When I was 19 years old, I bought myself a motorcycle. I'd been riding for about 6 months and felt pretty confident on it. This confidence is what almost killed me that day. It was a sunny day in September 2009, and I had just gotten out of my college class around 3 p.m. I put on my helmet, my gloves, and my backpack, and I thought to myself that I needed a haircut and started making my way towards the location, keeping in mind that getting on the freeway was going to be the quickest way there. Once I got on the freeway, it was pretty congested, but I decided I could zoom by the cars and get there in no time. As I saw my exit approaching and seeing I could possibly pass by the car in front of me, I sped up and passed the car at a high rate of speed, making the exit. Thinking I could maneuver easily around the curved corner that was about to come, I pressed on my brakes, and my motorcycle went into a high-speed wobble. At this point, I got thrown off the bike and vaguely remember falling off. I must have hit my head pretty hard because I blacked out. When I came to, I was sliding on my back, still at a high rate of speed on the freeway exit. This next part seemed like a movie, but everything around me seemed to be in slow motion. As I was sliding, I was passing cars left and right, and all I could hear is screeching from the tires. Once my body got more momentum, I rolled several times until I came to a complete stop. To my left, there was just dirt and grass, and to my right was the cars on the freeway. As I laid on the asphalt looking at my injuries, something made me look left. As I did, I saw this blonde lady, blue eyes, all white business attire, walking toward me in the dirt/grass area. Keep in mind, there wasn't a car anywhere near her, it was just barren land. As she comes up to me, she asks, "Were you the one that called?" I start telling her how could I have called, I was just involved in an accident. She then repeated again, "Were you the one that called?" Before I could answer her, I heard a door slam and a man yelling, "Are you all right?" as I turned to my right to tell him I was okay. I quickly looked back to my left and the lady was gone. I only lasted 3 hours in the hospital, with no broken bones, just road rash. I believe that if I had told that lady that I did call, I would have died right there on that freeway. I know I haven't been chiming in much on these, but really, I want the stories to stand on their own a lot of the time. Like, these are incredible experiences people have had. I don't want to take away from that. But for this one, if there sure isn't a better advertisement for driving safely. Getting to your location 30 seconds quicker is not worth whatever this is. And I know at least one of you guys is going to be in the comments like, "Oh, but I want to see a nice blonde lady in business style." Shut up. No, you don't. Not like this. Trust me, I think the cost benefit here is probably not worth it. Next story. I had a positive experience, but my favorite near-death experience story is told on an episode of the podcast Euphomet. Episode 10, Lives. He's not religious. He's describing disconnection and consciousness in a fascinating and frightening way. As for me, not sure of my age, but while a very young kid, I drowned in an apartment pool. There's a doc series on Prime, Death and Back. A woman describes her experience of drowning as a child. What she says is the closest I've ever heard to my own. I've never heard someone else talk about the light from below when they were drowning, but that's how it was for me too. I don't remember seeing my body, as she says, but I went from blackness to dark blues and progressively brighter light. I experienced an energetic warmth and comfort, unconditional love. Brilliant gold, then white replaced the blue. I was met by a sense of an ethereal awareness, but my memory ends there, apart from being revived. Since love was as of then an unfamiliar experience in life, returning came with very conflicting emotions. It wasn't too long after that when I impulsively attempted to jump out of a moving vehicle and off a cliff. As a kid with no sense of potential consequences, I just wanted to go back to the peace in the other existence. I'm thankful to know that we go to a place of greater connection. The decades since and a few good trips have shown me that we're never really separated from anything despite the density between. We just shift our awareness and the weight we feel inside becomes light. Next story. 23 minutes of work on me. If I didn't have my heart attack in my clinic, I wouldn't be here. I remember talking with one of my friends at a job we both had in an ER 35 years ago, just bullcrapping in a doorway. We looked in the room. There were 12 people in there working on me. I looked at him and told him I was gonna see what was going on with the poor bastard in the bed. I walked around everyone, saw my mom and grandma, both deceased, sitting in front of the bed as I walked around. I got to the other side of the bed, saw it was me, went, crap, guess I need to go back, leaned towards myself. Had this very realistic dream and woke up a week later. Thought I was in 6th grade for the next week. Then I slowly gained my bearings. 3 years later, 98% rehabbed. They told my wife I was supposed to be a vegetable. Next story. A yellow cottage surrounded by a wildly overgrown flower garden in the midst of a green field. Felt a presence behind me and a voice giving me a stern talking to for being there too early. Woke up with a strong sense of duty towards my loved ones, including ones I hadn't met yet. I must have been out for maybe a few minutes tops, but it felt like I was out for significantly longer. It flipped a switch in me. Still depressed, but taking my own life is absolutely not an option anymore. It's not my place to decide when I go, since my life affects others. Next story. I died in my shower when I was in my early 20s while my ex-boyfriend was in there with me. He reported I collapsed, was not breathing, and I was blue/gray. He reported it was quite a while that I was gone, to myself and the paramedics. No pulse. What I remember is floating down a black tunnel with a large square light at the far end of it. As I floated closer, I could see silhouettes of people on both sides of me. No facial features like eyes or faces. No voices, just dark silhouettes staring at me while I floated past. The closer I get to this light, I see it's a square window, and it's a gorgeous sunny day on the opposite side of it. Tall grass blowing around from the breeze, clear bluish skies with clouds. It was beautiful, but the closer I got, I could see my dog that passed away, running down the hill, stopping to look and seeing me. He trotted closer to the window as I was now at the end of this tunnel. It felt like all I had to do was climb over and into this gorgeous scenery, and I intended to do so. But he came up to me, tilted his head at me, and all I heard was, "Not now." And that's when I was flying backwards through the tunnel, flying past the dark silhouettes faster and faster until I flew back into my body, leaned forward, and heavily vomited the contents of my stomach in the bathtub while my ex was blinking in bewilderment. He had called 911, and I was so weak while he tried to get me out of the tub to put clothes on. The entire time, apparently, I was muttering my dog's name, asking where he was. My ex told me he's been gone for a long time. To this day, I know my dog, who was always considered my soul dog by family and friends, is the reason I didn't cross the barrier. It wasn't my time, but I still think about that gorgeous meadow from time to time. How peaceful and serene it seemed. The feeling it invoked. Death seemed peaceful. I'm agnostic with my fair share of paranormal experiences, but this one still makes me think of all the possibilities of what's on the other side. I've read these sorts of stories before, but even still, it's crazy how many of them have some voice, some figure, something that says, "Not yet." Like, this is a full-on phenomenon at this point. I really am curious about what that could actually be. Next story. My dad was dead for a few minutes from a heart attack. He saw the bright light and explained that he was moving forward. He saw silhouettes of people lined up on the sides. He could see that people were moving their bodies to try and get a better look at who was coming. When he was about to see the first face, that's when they used the defibrillator on him and brought him back. He said it was the most peaceful feeling he ever experienced and isn't afraid to die. And for anyone who's going to say that it was the paramedics he was seeing, his eyes were shut the entire time. He He saw rows of people and not the 2 paramedics that arrived. Next story. I saw everyone I ever lost in a big, really big yellow school bus. I was also having my hair brushed by my mother. I was in an induced coma. When I woke up, I had a purple barrette in my hair. The nurse was having a fit. "That's not supposed to be in your hair." I said, "Yes, it is." My mother put it there. I was in isolation. Thanks, Mom. Next story. I had an anaphylactic shock death. It was so unbelievably peaceful, and I felt love. I was in a tunnel and making my way towards the light when I heard my deceased brother say, "No, go back. It isn't your time." I woke up in an ambulance after my EpiPen and adrenaline had been administered. Next story. Paramedic here. I've seen plenty of people come back from the dead through emergency intervention and CPR. I've seen the most deeply religious people praying to God, Allah, etc. as they die. After a few moments, when they come back round, we ask them, "What happened? What did you see?" The answer is always a look of confusion, and the answer, nothing. No dreams, no bright lights, no golden gates, nothing at all. I saw a deeply religious man cry because he felt in that moment God did not exist. Next story. At first, panic. Then I remember having enough time to think something along the lines of, "Oh my God, this is how I die." Then there was an overwhelming feeling of calm, peace, and acceptance. Then nothing at all. It was just like sleeping without any dreams. I didn't have any life flashing before your eyes or anything like that, just checked out for a while. Next story. I choked when I was about 10. I had a dream where I felt this unusual dissociated feeling. I was swimming in the air with video game-like characters. When my father managed to unblock my airways, I came back, and I immediately said, "Why'd you wake me up? It was the best dream ever." It was almost the same feeling I had whilst smoking DMT. The same loving and accepted feeling that feels like pure love. Later I've read DMT is made when our brain goes into an oxygen-starved state to protect your gray matter. So DMT is basically a near-death experience. Next story. I recall being carried on the wind very high above the ground. The air was warm and smelled of spices. The buildings below had flat roofs and I could see candlelight from the windows. I didn't feel alone, but couldn't see anyone else. Apart from the sound of the wind in my ears, there was a constant sound of grinding stone, like you hear from millstones grinding grain. It was calm, gentle, and unforgettable. Next story. In 2019, just a few days before Thanksgiving, I had a late-night workout at my office gym. Afterward, I decided to use the sauna and take a cold shower as usual to wake myself up, before heading to my dad's cabin for a discussion. However, the moment I stepped into the sauna, I felt dizzy and fainted. As I fell, it felt like I was free-falling at thousands of miles per hour. In that moment, my life flashed before my eyes, and I became an observer of my past. I recalled several childhood accidents, including a near miss with boiling milk on the stove, where I had tipped a pan and burned my left hand. I had to go to the hospital and spent hours alone until my mom arrived. Another memory was of falling down 24 steep concrete stairs, where I could clearly see my older sibling pushing me when I was just 4 or 5. Although I never went to the hospital for that incident, I still bear scars from it. The smell of spring flowers from that hill remains vivid in my memory. During this experience in the sauna, I felt intense pain on the right side of my face, neck, shoulder, and hand as I instinctively protected myself. I had fallen near the steam pipe, and the heater was set high. In that moment, I was ready to let go of life. But then I saw the faces of my beautiful wife and our 6-year-old daughter. It sparked a fierce determination to fight and escape the sauna. I'm not sure how long I was unconscious for, but when I came to, I had lost skin on the right side of my head, ear, neck, shoulder, and arm. I went into shock, but still planned to make the trip to the cabin feeling no pain. For 3 days I resisted going to the hospital, still processing my childhood memories and feeling a desire to end it all. Eventually, after my wife's insistence, I went to the hospital. The experience of having the nurse scrub my wounds was unpleasant, but I didn't remember the pain. It felt like reliving past trauma in a way that led to a cathartic release. My life changed drastically after the accident. I went from running a successful construction business, earning $3.5 million a year with over 20 employees, to staying home for 2 years, focusing on my health and spending time with my family. While I was physically present, I often felt emotionally distant. My family became my motivation to keep going, even as I struggled with the deep depression and isolation. Reflecting on my childhood trauma, I now understand that I had been assaulted before those accidents, which I had suppressed for so long. wrong. This trauma affected my ability to connect with others, and I didn't engage in any relationships until I met my wife at age 20. She is the only woman in my life. I watched friends share stories of their childhood abuse and their struggles with desires, and I realize I might have followed a similar path if not for my experiences. In a way, life is unfolding as it should. In the aftermath of the accident, I used weed as a crutch for a while, but I eventually moved past that. I found joy in doing labor work again, tapping into a suppressed part of myself. Interestingly, I had to write with my left hand while my right arm was bandaged, and now my left hand writing is beautiful, a stark contrast to my previous. This experience has brought me closer to spirituality and a belief in the afterlife and karma. I now believe that I don't need anything in life, as desire can be a sin. I understand that this mindset is essential to avoid being reincarnated and to find peace in my next life, whatever that may be. I feel complete and ready to leave this world without the need to relive this earthly existence. Each day is a gift from God, and I wake up prepared for whatever challenges the day may bring. I live now for my family and serve them wholeheartedly to the best of my abilities. Next story. I can share my experience. I was giving birth and it was going wrong. I was bleeding out and my baby was showing severe signs of fetal distress. I thought I was on a boat. It was on a quiet lake, and I was drifting further and further out into the silvery white. I could hear voices off in the distance, but only just. It was very, very peaceful, and I was just drifting away, until I heard my sister's voice saying, "We're doing a cesarean," and I didn't care. Had no sense of it at all. Apparently the room was crowded, full of people rushing about, but I honestly thought it was just me and my sister there. There was a happy outcome. My beautiful girl and I survived. But I have often thought since then that I really hope that all women who died in childbirth back in the day, and there were so many, had an experience like mine, just drifting off into the silver, calm, and content. Next story. I fell from the roof while playing with the neighbor. The next thing I remember is I'm seeing him carry me in his arms to my house. Then I was somehow trapped in a mirror in my room, watching my body on a bed, and then I was pulled into it. Strange experience. I'm skeptical about it, but it was how I remember it. I don't think I was dead, though, just some kind of coma maybe, but my family lived in the area without access to medical help, so I guess I was lucky. Living somewhere away from medical help and surviving anything is a bit lucky, yeah. And as a side note, I'm glad OP acknowledges that they're skeptical about their past memories because these memories can just be fake, especially when you're really young. You have an accident and that especially plays into it, but memories can essentially be implanted in you. Usually not on purpose, but like you could be told that things happened a certain way, or you could otherwise just come to believe they happen a certain way, and then you will really believe it and have false memories of it. Children's minds are just really malleable like that. It's pretty cool to think about, but also kind of freaks me out because I'm wondering how many of my memories are actually real. All of them, I hope. Next story. It happened fast and was surprisingly calm, similar to falling asleep after a long day. I was given adenosine due to a cardiac issue, and the point of the meds is to stop and restart your heart. But when I was given the dose, I flatlined for longer than expected and needed a defib and CPR to be brought back. All I recall visually seeing was an infinite amount of stars, like looking up into the universe. I was raised Catholic, but after that experience, I fully accepted the idea of reincarnation. Next story. Nothing. And it was almost instant. No time to panic or think, this is it. Was here, was gone. Then came back after approximately 45 minutes of CPR. Don't want to get into the details. There was absolutely nothing. CPR left me with chronic chest trauma. 2 years later, I'm still in severe pain. Next story. For me, it was weird. I'm not religious. I didn't have tunnels or bright lights, but I had my life play out in front of my eyes in what I can describe as a split second. It was reviewed without judgment, and I was shown when I had made the wrong choices and how it affected the life of someone. After that is what I can only describe as complete love and peace. For the first time in my life, I felt whole, and it felt like I was back where I belonged. It's hard to put that feeling across correctly. The only situation which has evoked something similar is when you fall in love with someone for the first time, and during the first few months, you feel this joy and glow from the inside. Next story. My mother saw her dead relatives telling her it's too soon, that she must continue to live for she will have children. Pretty wholesome at the time, but now she's in a children raised, I can go mood. Because she saw the afterlife or whatever, she's not scared. But like, girl, we want you around for your grandchildren. Next story. I was 5 and drowned on a family holiday. My sister found and revived me, and it was never acknowledged by my parents. It took me decades to process not only what I saw, but that I saw it. I felt like I was surrounded by other souls, and I was becoming part of the universe. Next thing, my sister shouting and beating my chest, and I'm at the beach. Totally too much for a child to process. But as an adult, I realize it's framed my beliefs in quantum mechanics and the acceptance that matter is always matter, even as it changes form. Okay, when Opie started, I realize it's framed my beliefs. Surely every one of us thought, oh, framed his beliefs in spirituality or God or whatever. No, quantum mechanics. Yeah, okay, dude. Not what I would have jumped to immediately, but fair enough. Next story. I started on a roller coaster going up a steep hill, like the largest roller coaster you've ever seen. It was also snowing heavily. There were people ahead of me and they fell off before we got to the top. Once I did, it turned into a water slide. It was rainbow and I was going over the desert. I stuck my hand into the water and could feel how warm and wet it was and said to myself, this isn't a dream. I can feel the water. Then bam. Woke up in the ER, was told I was in a coma. Next story. I've never died, but I've seen the ones I love die and experienced some warnings of death. I don't believe in emptiness. I believe in something, but I don't understand. I've seen people talk to loved ones who are coming to get them, but when my mom was headed out, she said Jesus was there and she had to go. It took a day or so, but she passed. I like to believe he picked her up in person, so to speak. Next story. This was 40 years ago, but we were poor, like dirt poor. No car, no money, extended family all living in a tiny house, poor. When I was 10, my kidneys exploded. Water weight, I ballooned up like I ate the wrong piece of Wonka candy and had to be rushed to the hospital in the city, in our car ride that we didn't have. I basically rolled around the back of a cargo van until we got there, spent weeks in the hospital, and my mother basically gave them permission to experiment on me, new treatments, etc., in lieu of payments. They probably knew that they were never going to get the payments anyway. This turned out to be good, because the treatment they gave me then is now the SOP for my particular flavor of kidney explosion. But I spent weeks in the hospital, often going several days without a visitor or family member present because, hey, we were poor, no one had cars, money, and couldn't take time from work. About 3 days in, I went into failure and had to be resuscitated. Now, obviously at 10, I didn't know I was dying, and I didn't find out what happened until I was like 15 or 16. But this is what I remember. It was like I was standing to the side of myself. A dozen doctors and nurses rushed into the room, lifted me into a seated position from laying, hooked me up to a million things, and it was chaos. I wasn't scared, just confused and trying to be good, like a kid would. It was scary and frightening, and no one was talking to me, just around me as they flipped me around and did doctor stuff. Just when I felt myself about to cry, I noticed a woman in the doorway to my room. She was dressed in the adult-sized version of the gown that I wore, and she was smiling. She was pretty, early 30s, shoulder-length, brown, curly hair, and she waved. I waved back. She smiled and told me I was going to be okay, not to worry. The doctors were going to help, and if I wanted to, I should close my eyes and rest. She was an adult, so I did. When I woke up, I was alone in the room, and a day had passed, and my family was there. I couldn't talk with everything on my face, but when I finally could, I told them everything. They chalked it up to me being in toxic shock, confused, scared, and dreaming. But I kept asking about the woman because she felt like a mother. Warm, soothing, calm, everything a motherly figure should be. But I got told that I was dreaming or it was another patient because of how she was dressed. So I chalked it up to that as a child. But another patient just hanging out in the doorway as I died and a dozen medical professionals buzzed around the room never made sense. Why could I hear her but not the doctors? Why did she never look at them, only me? Why would they let her stand there and watch? Then I found out that I had to be resuscitated that day. It kind of clicked. And I had a million questions. Was it toxicity in the blood? Possibly. Was it a dream? I did wake up a day later. Was it the body shutting everything off to give me a peaceful death? That is what happens. Was it a kind but nosy patient who wanted to calm a dying, scared kid? Could be. Was it the ghost of a former patient? I can't say. But I do believe in spirits, ghosts, etc., and I've seen things I can't explain or people I couldn't find. But I can still see her face, even 40 years later. There's something kind of magical about believing this sort of thing happened at face value, you know? Like, sure, you could explain it away in a million ways, but it might lead to a richer, more fulfilling, more interesting life to just say, yeah, that happened. Maybe if you're going into medicine, you'd want to be like, well, the toxicity in the blood would cause you to have hallucinations or whatever. But for the average person, I feel like it's all right to just look at that and say, you know what? Sure, I did see some spirit, I did see some ghost, because hey, at the end of the day, why not? Next story. I was poisoned by a college roommate and died in my first class of the morning. I had a severe pain in my stomach/intestines and then went into an insane flop sweat. In a matter of seconds, I sweat through my clothing and got so weak I couldn't keep my head up. I got up to try and go to the bathroom, made it to the front of the classroom, and collapsed. I remember the cold floor feeling really comforting, but that weakness that made it hard to keep my head upright was making it hard to breathe. I blacked out a moment later when the pain in my stomach got intensified. The only reason I'm alive is that a registered nurse was acting as a stand-in teacher for an English class. Next story. My mom's older sister, my auntie, had her tonsils removed when she was 18 and started bleeding out profusely, but then found herself in the corner of the room in the ceiling and was watching them perform CPR as they were losing her and heard everything so clearly, and next thing she knows, she was coming to and told the doctor who saved her everything. He apparently turned completely pale and was so shocked he had to leave the room. I believe her 100%. She was a very honest lady and wouldn't ever lie about something like that. Next story. So, 2 days before my 17th birthday, my sister overdosed and took her own life. I was distraught, as anyone would be, and struggling to sleep. I had a bunk bed and slept on the bottom bunk. The first night, I was emotional and restless, and I rolled over and looked at my chair, and she was there. She was sitting on my chair with her head down, hair in front of her face, arms splayed on the armrest, wearing some sort of gown. I froze and stared at her until the sun rose, and once the light made it into my room, poof, she was gone. I don't know how to describe it. She just wasn't there anymore. I would have recognized her anywhere, so I was sure it was her. The next night I slept on the top bunk, but I was scared and struggling to sleep. As I was still struggling to sleep, I just wanted to make sure she wasn't in the chair again, so I peeked over the bed, and she wasn't in the chair. She was splayed out on the ground, hair in front of her face again, looking up in the same gown. I watched her again until the sun rose, and just like that, she was gone. I don't know why she would just disappear. I just blink, and she was gone. The third night, I was laying on the top bunk and too scared to look over the railing again to see if she was there, so I tried to sleep and finally did. My dream was strange, though. I was in a doctor's office from the 90s. There were 2 rows of blue cushioned seats in the middle with some on the opposite wall and some on the wall I was against. They had the round wooden armrests and feet. The walls were white and plain and bare. There was only one door near the far right corner of the wall that was blue, and it had a small window in it that shone the brightest, whitest light I've ever seen. There was a receptionist desk right next to it with the large glass windows that also had the same light shining through, but no one was there, just light. I looked across the room and saw a man sitting in a chair across it. He hadn't been there before. He was wearing a medical gown, the one with the little blue and red triangle shapes. His head was shaved, but not bald. He was looking at the door. He slowly turned to me, and his irises were gold. Not like shining brightly video game or cartoon gold, just normal iris brightness, but gold. He tilted his head like he was curious about me, and he said, "OP, why aren't you breathing?" with the calmest voice. I immediately took the deepest breath of my life and woke up. I guess at some point I'd stopped breathing in my sleep. I'll never forget him, or the room, or my sister those nights. I never saw my sister again after that. Next story. About 14 years ago, I was in Mexico with my family. First time all 4 of us had gone on a vacation together. Christmas Day, my cousin comes and wakes me up and asks if I wanted to go up on the mountains with their ATVs. My family owns this local shop where they deliver water jugs, milk cartons, etc. up to the folks who live up there for an added fee. My mom was like, "Don't get on that." Foolishly, I said I'm on vacation. First time on a manual ATV, so I took the ride up to get used to it. Long story short, on the way down, I thought I was good, and my cousin says, "Let's race." Of course, I say, "Let's freaking go." I accidentally geared up instead of down and ended up doing a wheelie of sorts off the cliff. I fell about 40 to 50 feet, broke my wrist, bone popped out, so my wrist or thumb was actually touching my forearm, broke my elbow, and ultimately the ATV rolled onto my neck. I was in a coma for just under 2 weeks, but here's the strange part. I remember all of it, everything. Best way to describe it is I was in vicinity of my body, but watching it from the outside, I guess. When we get to the hospital, all I can see is the back of my family's heads, see my body on the hospital beds. There was this one guy who had been in a horse accident racing and screwed up his knees from the fall. When I came back to, I asked my mom how'd the guy's surgery go, and she was shocked that I knew about that. Next story. As I died, I felt incredibly at peace. Ironic, because up to this point I'd been feeling afraid of death. I was able to reach over and hold my bestie's hand and tell her I love her, and to tell my son and my people that I loved them with my very being. Then I got really cold and died. Everything just went black, and then, from black to nothingness. Came to after they resuscitated me and did surgery to repair the blown femoral artery that killed me. Lost my fear of death. I'm not even afraid of dying. My body knows how to do it, and do it peacefully. I'll be ready when my time is proper. Next story. It happened when I was around 10. Choked on a sausage link in front of my sisters at the table and had to be revived. I remember my sisters crying, one praying, and then the next moment, tall grass being moved by the wind. And I'm allergic to grass, but it's like I was instantly pushed into this hill with tall grass and wind making it sway. Next thing I know, I woke up in a hospital bed with a Casper balloon tied to the bed frame and my mom in tears. All these years later, I still have that deflated balloon folded in a drawer, and I love the view of swaying grass. Okay, sorry, a Casper balloon? As in the ghost. I don't know, man, that feels like bad mojo to tie on like a hospital bed, right? Something just feels wrong about it to me. Maybe I'm the weird one. Next story. I don't know if I died for sure, but I passed out while driving, sober for an unknown reason. Last thing I remember is my head hitting the driver's side door window and screaming. Can still hear the scream. Then everything was black, and I heard a voice asking me if I wanted to stay or go. And on par with my personality, I kept responding in my head, I don't know. It kept asking, and I said, stay. Woke up. Car fresh out of the ditch on opposite side of the road. Ditch almost in line with the middle of rear bumper, car straddling it, headlights on, in front of a large rock. Got out, checked a ditch. All torn up about 6 to 8 feet deep with tire marks and ruts. Not one dent or mud-caked running board or wheel well. Was wild. Didn't tell anyone for a week when I finally, again on par with my ADHD decision-making, decided to take my sister to the ditch so she could be a witness to the aftermath of whatever happened. I've only told about 3 people this story, and it was 20 years ago. Next story. I woke up in a field of crops that had been harvested, but I was already standing. It was sunny with very few clouds. The only thing I could see for miles was this harvested field and birds. I walked for a long time before coming on this one-story house. A few of my family members were out on the porch, smoking cigarettes, drinking beer, and listening to music. None of them looked my way until I was right before them. Then one of them saw me and looked panicked. He grabbed me, told me, you shouldn't be here yet, and shoved me through the front door. After he did that, I woke up in the hospital. Next story. I had an accident while woodworking, poorly. My very sharp chisel caught a knot and skipped from the wood to the underside of my wrist, and suddenly I had an inch-deep laceration running from wrist to elbow. Severed every main blood vessel and tendon. Couldn't get my phone, so I ran down the street calling for help. 1 block away, I suddenly lost the ability to stand and so fell to the concrete. I rolled over and watched the blue sky fade to black. Just like the end of a Looney Tunes cartoon. It was a moment of no fear, absolute peace, but there was nothing in that darkness. It was just a transition from something to nothing. I woke up after surgery. I collapsed in front of a man who served as a medic during the Vietnam War. He stopped the bleeding, called 911, and saved me. Just amongst this relatively serious story, reading like a Looney Tunes cartoon really... I'm not going to say took me out of it, but caught me by surprise at least. Anyway, that is some pretty decent luck there, OP. Managing to find just the right person to pass out in front of, I guess. That accident, also horrifying. I don't even want to think about that. While reading it, I definitely looked at my wrist and forearm area and went, ooh. But hey, Glad you're here with us still. Also, small thing I noticed, none of these stories were offered that choice. Like, some of them were offered the choice, right, of do you want to stay or is it time to go? And they all said stay. Not one person in this thread said, no, I'll go, and then woke up anyway. I don't know what that says, but all I'm saying is if you're offered the choice, you should probably pick stay, just to be safe. Anyway, that's the last story for today. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you have a wonderful day or night wherever you are, and I will see you in the next one.